Good morning. My name is Kelvin Ravindran, and I serve at St. George UBF, which is located at the University of Toronto. And I'm here to talk about how we use Slack as a virtual church ministry, or how can Slack be used for campus mission. So in our ministry, what is Slack not? Slack is not a social media platform like Facebook or Instagram. Slack is not a cross-platform voice over IP messenger like WhatsApp, KakaoTalk, or WeChat. Slack is not file storage and synchronization like Google Drive or OneDrive. It is also not a video conferencing application like Zoom or Facebook Messenger. Slack has all these features, but we have some specific use cases that we use in our church. So to our church, how can Slack be summarized? Slack is a messaging application that can be summarized into three things: channels, applications, and activity summary. First of all, what are channels? Channels are topics of discussion that contain only the people who are interested in that topic. So as a church, you can have, 50 people in your Slack, but not everyone is responsible for the praise and worship. Not everyone is responsible for uploading the daily bread. Not everyone is interested in news about COVID-19. Not everyone is interested in, um, you know, current affairs, or not everyone lives in a specific neighborhood. So you can create channels where you could have more granular control of the conversation. And also you can have channels where you have everyone, like announcements, like for example, the website's down, or just weekly announcements, or if the subway is not running, you could have channels for many things. So the way to summarize channels are, they are like granular conversations that only people who are interested can participate. Not everyone has to be in all channels. Next is applications. As you know, many of you have come to learn to use many new applications, like Zoom as a big one, Google Drive, Google Hangouts. And as a church, some of you already have some standards of what app you use to share our files. For example, in my church, we use Google Drive to share our files. Not everyone uses OneDrive. And in my church, we use Zoom for our meetings, not Google Hangouts. So if you want all of that to be in one place, if you want all of that to be organized, especially stuff for your church, you can embed that application into Slack, so that, for example, if you want to start a meeting in a Saturday Live group, you can just go up to the Saturday Live group channel, which is the conversation, and just type in start Zoom meeting or /Zoom, and it'll create a Zoom meeting link for people to join. Or if you want to share a file and you want everybody in that group to have permissions to read it, all you need to do is just submit a link in that channel, and everybody who has in that channel can look at that file. I'll talk about that more later. So Slack can embed multiple applications. Third thing is an activity summary, which I find really important. In a day and age where we are bombarded with information from everywhere, you look at your phone, there's notifications everywhere. And especially as you're a missionary, how do you keep up with all of that, right? And within the church, even though there's a lot of chatter going here and there, we want you to only get notifications of the conversations that you can partake in and you can bring positive value, and something that you're interested in, something that you're listening in or watching in. So the activity summary in Slack is a great place for you to summarize that information you got. So, it's been a long day, you come home and you get on Slack. The activity summary tells you, where were you mentioned, what threads or what conversations are going on that you have been a part of. Did someone call your name? Did someone send you a file? Stuff like that. That's all at the top. So as missionaries, when we come in, we look at our church on a Tuesday, and we just coming and seeing, you get a summary of what happened that day in that church through Slack. So the use case one for Slack is we use it as a virtual Bible center. Let me touch a bit more deeper into that. So for one, in our church on Sundays, we have announcements, right? And you don't have to wait for announcements every Sunday. What you can do is you can have announcements, as often as you can. And you want everybody in the church to know what's going on. So for example, at the top, You have announcements that the website's down and you can't get questions there. So what do? You just upload the questions to Slack and the Bible study questions. So if everyone in the church gets the announcement that the website is down, they can just come grab it from here. Another thing is, if Sunday service was canceled because of COVID, and we're going to meet at home, and here's the Zoom link and stuff like that, you can use the announcement. You can create a channel for the announcements for all the churches, all your whole church. Now, the second thing, an example we have is Subway. We live in Toronto, and Toronto is, many people use public transit very heavily, especially in the downtown core. And some of us, we take the subway to come to church. And many times in the weekend, there's a lot of maintenance. So one example is, Sam, who is one of our leaders, who's in charge of that channel. He posts information that he finds that about the subway. If there's closures on a Sunday, which is important for students and people like me to know who commute, right? So these are ways we use Slack channels to create announcements, to broadcast information to the whole church. Second thing is church events organizer. So, as a church, we're always growing, things are always changing. And, sometimes there are events that happen weekly, periodically. Sometimes there's a one-off event that you need to prepare for. So for example, on the top left here, we had a channel which was for Sam and Emerald Mukwedea's wedding. And over there, we had all the people who are participating, all the people who were sharing content and who were preparing for the wedding, or information regarding our flights and this and that, and people praying for us. And also, I had to say a prayer for his wedding. So I put up a link of my Google Drive of the prayer, and, it was proofread. And so basically it was a channel for that certain event. And once the event was over, the channel was archived, was stored away, meaning not deleted, but stored away, so that in case, if there's another wedding in the future and there were discussions about this wedding, we could come back and look into this wedding. But that channel is archived, meaning people don't contribute to it anymore. So there's nothing that you can add to it anymore. It's kind of like a historical artifact. Now on the right here, we have a weekly event, which is like praise and worship, where we talk about, what's the songs this Sunday. And we create the PowerPoint and we share it. And my pastor shares the sermon, that PowerPoint that he does, and we embed it. So anything regard to praise and worship, whether it be music instruments or stuff, or songs, we talk about it there. And not everybody in my church participates in this channel. So not everybody has to be there, right? So it's a church events organizer, be it continual events or a one-time event. A forum to share and receive. So, as a church, we are always sharing, our struggles, the Word of God, and we want there to be a safe space for students to share freely, and we want to encourage them to share, to take up, follow our footsteps, baby steps to baby steps. And many of them, they develop that confidence later on. But however, we can create a safe space for them. So what we did in our church is that we created a channel for prayer requests, where there's a 24/7 prayer request room where you can share your prayer requests at any time, and someone who reads it can pray. And it can be simple prayers, like for example, someone's family member passed away, and just pray that the funeral go on smoothly. For here, you see an example here, Sai, our church member, is frustrated with the work project. He's asking prayer. These are really important things that, we struggle alone, but why don't we bring it out to the church, and the church can help us pray, and we can thank God, and God answers our prayers. So on the right here, we have a group for the Saturday Life group. So a Saturday Life group is our, more intermediate Bible study group. And over there, we share material like books that we are reading or questionnaires. And that channel is just for the people who are interested in joining the Saturday Life group. So every Saturday, we could post the Zoom link there. And anybody who participates there only can subscribe to that channel, right? So as far we can see, we saw that we could have announcements, we could have event organizing, we can have a forum where we can share and receive, right? Now, what if you want to share information, but not to everybody, and you don't want anybody, just anybody to come in and join? For example, we can have a channel for just all the Bible leaders, the Bible teachers, who want to discuss some strategies or something, but we want that to be kind of private. Slack has that ability to create either public channels or private channels. So a private channel is an example where you have to be invited to it and you can't join if you're not invited. This is good if church, you want to keep some sensitive information away, keep it for specific purpose. So for example, in our church, we have one for the co-workers. And there we talk about strategy, how do we effectively teach the Bible? How do we, there's something going on with the student that we need some prayer, but it's sensitive information, right? So we can have private channels as well. And you can even make your own private channel if you have a group of friends and you guys are struggling with something, you want to talk it through, you can even create your own private channels within Slack. So use case 2, devotion and reflection facilitator. So let me dive in a bit deeper into it. So the most important feature, and the one we use almost every single day, actually more than a couple of times a day, is our daily bread. So in Toronto, we don't have 5:30 a.m. daily bread where we meet at the church. We don't have a big church where we all meet. We all have small Bible centers, and all of us are kind of dispersed around the city. That does not mean we cannot share daily bread and receive daily bread. So Slack is an amazing place where we created a daily bread channel, and at least one person a day shares a daily bread, either following the UBF or following their own daily bread schedule. And what we could do is you could share your daily bread, and people can reply to it, can react to it, give you a heart, encourage you. And this way we notice that sometimes students share daily bread as well, because they are always watching, and they're always watching us share. And sometimes they can receive the word of the Lord through this daily bread ministry. And the great thing about this daily bread ministry is that it's not just at 5:30 a.m. although most of us do it in the day, some people do it at night. So this thing 24/7 daily bread kind of going on is kind of great for the students who don't necessarily have a set schedule themselves. And multiple people can share, and honestly it's a good way to develop daily Bible sharing and reading. So I just want to talk a little bit about the structure of the application here. Is that on the left is the main messenger, but when you click on each message on the right, you can see a thread, meaning that a continuation of that conversation. For example, Sai is replying to Sam's message, but on the main page, you don't see Sai's message because it's kind of hidden down here as a reply. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is reflection writing. Now, many of us are familiar with it, but during the COVID time, how do we sit and share reflections? And reflections are much longer. You don't want to bombard the whole messenger with a 2-page reflection. This is when Google Drive and OneDrive comes in handy. When we embed Google Drive, as you can see here, Joshua Kim, he just needs to share his link, and you could see a preview of his reflection. And when you click on it, it brings you to his reflection, which is your Google Drive, right? So this way, we can encourage students, to write their reflection in another application and just share the link here. And the people who have Slack now, they can just click on that link and it'll just bring them over to that document without the Slack looking bombarded with a lot of words. So this is really helpful. It helps organize the information that a person is getting. And, once you read his reflection, you can click on it and you can reply to him. As you can see on the right, I told Josh, thank you for sharing, and we read it and we're going to continue praying for you. And we can react to each person's encouragement as well. As you can see, the hearts and stuff. These little things actually make a lot of difference in encouraging someone, and Slack is a great place to learn that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is another channel we have is the Thanksgiving topic, which I think is the easiest thing to get the students going up. So, there's many things to be thankful for. We can thank God for the most simplest things. And we started by, just thanking God for a past exam, or thanking God that the weather is good, just starting that engine going. And we noticed that some students, they start to share as well. They thank God that, something they were praying for, that God answered it. And it really brings in an aura of thanksgiving and looking to God as the provider of all that. And so in Slack, we created a channel called Thanksgiving, and we find that students contribute the most here. As you notice here, there's a student named Anna Ku, and she's, we've been praying for her grandma over at Prayer Request channel. And now in Thanksgiving, she's saying, her grandma's doing well, and all of us are happy because we all prayed for it, and we are getting kind of live updates of what's going on with her family. It's kind of like we're all kind of just like living together. It's kind of great. So Slack is also a personal conversation and counseling room. So you've seen so many channels, right? What about, talking to just a group of friends because you just want to talk to them, nothing church related, kind of talking about, the weather, or just talking about playing soccer after work, or just going out for dinner, right? So we set that up as well. So we set up Uptown Squad here, where it's a channel for everyone who lives north of the downtown core. And here we just talk about, things. And sometimes, like for example, here we talked about, on Sundays, when it's someone's birthday that week, we buy them a birthday cake. So we kind of coordinate that over here. And, we just talk about things, like going out to eat. And so a channel can be any kind of abstraction, really. You could just create a channel if a group has any kind of similarities or interests, which is really great because, different churches, you build your own channels. You don't have to have the same channels as us. Some may be similar, like announcements and prayer requests, but for example, Uptown Squad, that's completely up to the church. And finally, what it is great for is also the one-to-one fellowship. So if, as you can notice here, I'm talking to my best friend Sai, and we even have Zoom meetings that we talk to each other through Slack. And we actually, for the last few months, we've been meeting every morning at 9 a.m. and every night at 10, and just praying by starting our day and ending our day with prayer. And, it's just like Facebook Messenger, but it's just internalize it as Slack being where your church talks, where your church is, what your church is doing, how you can learn more about your church and stuff like that. Just going to Slack, because it's the virtual church that's kind of set up right now. So you may have Facebook, you may have Instagram, you may have all these different apps. But if we just use Slack as the way our church kind of communicates and keeps its information, that's one way you can differentiate, between SNS, like social media, and what your church is doing. So that really helped our church a lot with Slack. So, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. The next question you may have is, all the pictures you've been showing me, Calvin, they are on a desktop. What if I'm not on my desktop all the time? What if I'm using my phone all the time? And I have good news for you. Slack's phone application is amazing as well. As you can see, I showed you, how it looks like on the desktop, but here is what it looked like on the mobile. It's that all the channels, there's like 3 views. So the first view comes in all your channels. And then when you click on your channels, then you see all your conversations. And when you click on each conversation, it moves to the thread level. So you can zoom into that conversation. So Slack is a really amazing tool that organizes conversation so that you don't get bombarded with information here and there. And also, you don't get notified for every single message. Imagine 100 people talking, and you don't want to get notified for every single thing. You want to just get notified for the things that you may be interested in, right? So Slack is a great way for that, and Channels is a great way for that. And we've been using it in our church for 15 months now, and it's been an amazing tool. And students have been learning, students have been participating, and as a church, we remain connected. For example, I have a small group with my pastor and his